Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. We're chanting this morning Canto 3, Chapter 28, text number 1. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Yogasya Lakshanam Vakshe Sabijasya Nrpatmane Mano Yenaiva Vidhinam Prasanam Yati Satpatam. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Yogasya Lakshanam Vakshe Sabijasya Nrpatmaje Mano Yenaiva Vidhinam Prasanayati Satpatam. Shri Bhagavan Vacha ladies. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. The personality of Godhead said, Yogasya, of the yoga system, Lakshanam, description, Vakshe, I shall explain, Sabijasya, authorized, Nripa Atmaje, O daughter of the king, Manaha, the mind, Yena, by which, Eva, certainly, Vidhina, by practice, Prasanam, joyful, Yati, attains, Sat Patam, the path of the absolute truth. Translation: the personality of Godhead said, My dear mother, O daughter of the king, now I shall explain to you the system of yoga, the object of which is to concentrate the mind. By practicing this system, one can become joyful and progressively advance toward the path of the absolute truth. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The yoga process explained by Lord Kapila Dev in this chapter is authorized and standard, and therefore these instructions should be followed very carefully. To begin, the Lord says that by the yoga practice, one can make progress towards understanding the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the previous chapter, it has been clearly stated that the desired result of yoga is not to achieve some wonderful mystic power. One should not be at all attracted by such mystic power, but should attain progressive realization on the path of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, which states in the last verse of the 6th chapter that the greatest yogi is he who constantly thinks of Krishna within himself, or he who is Krishna conscious. Paragraph. It is stated here that by following the system of yoga, one can become joyful. Lord Kapila, the Personality of Godhead, who is the highest authority on yoga, here explains the yoga system, known as Ashtanga Yoga, which comprises 8 different practices, namely Yama Niyama Asana Pranayama, Pratyahara Dharana Dhyana Samadhi. By all these stages of practice, one must realize Lord Vishnu was the target of all yoga. There are so-called yoga practices in which one concentrates the mind on voidness or on the impersonal, but this is not approved by the authorized yoga system explained by Kapila Dev. Even Patanjali explains that the target of all yoga is Vishnu. Ashtanga Yoga is therefore part of Vaishnava practice because its ultimate goal is realization of Vishnu. The achievement of success in yoga is not acquisition of mystic power, which is condemned in the previous chapter, but rather freedom from all material designations and situation in one's constitutional position. That is the ultimate achievement in yoga practice. Just some appreciation how Prabhupada weaves into one purport kind of like a summary of Bhagavad Gita, or he encapsulates in simple language lessons that so many people don't understand. Popular as it may be, yoga, the word, and then the practice of, they're not practicing yoga, they don't know what yoga is, and they don't have a clue. I mean, the word is there, but they don't really know what it is. And there's lots of people that will teach what it isn't, or their version of what it isn't, and become popular. And, without giving examples, but many examples. And so it then becomes a business. There's a market. In the marketplace, people have an interest in what it isn't. So someone sells this and someone sells that, and it's so special to get the Bhaktivedanta purports. ABC, or undergraduate study Bhagavad Gita, and same principles. What's presented here by Kapila Dev is not something new. It's just an extension of what's already in Bhagavad Gita. For example, reference to the last verse of the 6th chapter, Yogi Namapi Sarve Sham Mud Gati Mud Gatena Antaratmana Mud Gatena Antaratmana Shadhavan Bhajate Yamam Sameyukta Uttama Mataha. So that's what Krishna says, and here Kapila Deva is saying the same thing. Now, the verse says to concentrate the mind. That's incomplete because concentrate the mind on what? Because yoga or meditation, let's just use the word meditation, dhyan, dharana, samadhi, stages of meditation, and there's other descriptions that are more replete, more numerous, different degrees of stages of fixing the mind besides those three, or in addition to those three, or subsets of those three, to fixing the mind. But then fixing the mind on the absolute truth, because the fixing of the mind, although it's not explicit, it's implicit, because the speaker is incarnation of the personality of Godhead. Inclination of the personality of Godhead is not going to steer people towards anything other than the absolute truth, because he's the absolute truth. He's steering people to him, just as Krishna does. He steers people to him, himself. So the different stages, and this is one of those stages. That's explicitly within the verse. It can lead one. By practicing this system, one can become joyful and progressively advance towards the path of the absolute truth. So then comes, what's the absolute truth? Vedanta Sutra. And it's realized in different, as the Bhagavatam tells us, it's realized in different features. So this is one of those features, but it's not the completeness of the absolute truth, but it's in the direction of the path of the absolute truth, advancing towards the path of the absolute truth. And as Prabhupada writes in the purport, this is an authorized process. It's a Vaishnava process. We may, Hare Krishna people, we may think that's not bhakti. It's not bhakti. But it leads to realization of Vishnu, and therefore it's a Vaishnava practice. And so we find the Vaishnavas engaging in that process. Vaishnavas engaging in that process. When it's properly directed. So the people that aren't Vaishnavas that engage in at least some portions of that practice. My mind is going to some years back, I don't remember what year it was, and I was taking Ayurvedic treatment in Bombay. Pankaj Naram had his clinic in some place in Bombay. So I was taking Ayurvedic treatment, and there was a person who was helping me get back and forth between where I was staying and the Ayurvedic clinic. And his wife was very enthusiastic to have me go see this yoga ashram outside Bombay. Wasn't like thrilled to go see the yoga ashram, so I was interested in Ayurvedic treatment. But she was a nice lady and very persuasive, and so I went. So off we went, out and out and out and out. You could see off in the distance the skyline of Bombay that was was urban, like Passion, and then this place was rural. And the by design, there was nice big trees, shade. You know, in Bombay, that's an opulence, shade, because it's very hot in Bombay. And so he had a little place like an ashram, but he had students that came to learn Ashtanga yoga. But he wasn't a Vaishnava. He was practicing practices, but not with the right purpose, or not the Vaishnava purpose, to realize Vishnu. You know, you can I didn't ask, but I could take a guess what his target was. It's not Vishnu, then what's his target? The impersonal. And then with the impersonal comes the teachings of impersonal and so forth. So the point is, from practical experience, there's imitations of the real thing, and it's hard to find the real thing. So what Vaishnava school teaches Ashtanga Yoga in a way that it's Vishnu is the target, and very clearly it's a path to lead to Bhagavan, because that's the construct of the teachings of Kapila Dev to Devahuti, because he's an incarnation, and he's teaching his mother, who, you know, the whole process of their exchange with one another is Kapila Dev, the father of Kardama Muni, the father left. That was part of the agreement between Devahuti, or the Swayambhuva Manu, the father of Devahuti, and Kardama Muni. I'll marry, but when there's a son that's born that's of age to take care of my mother, I'm leaving this ashram, the Grihastha ashram. And when he left, she was feeling sad, or separation. And so, knowing that she was feeling those feelings, her son sat her down and was satisfying her feelings by teaching her the step by step to realize Bhagavan. And this is one of the steps. You know, going back, you know, the system of Sankhya. But what's the purpose of Sankhya? It's the same as what's in Bhagavad Gita. There's Sankhya that leads to Bhakti, or Buddhi Yoga. Sankhya leads to Buddhi Yoga, which is another word for Bhakti Yoga, because Buddhi means intelligence. And what's intelligence? To serve the Supreme. So it's just a more complete picture of the same thing that Krishna is teaching in Bhagavad Gita. The goal of Bhagavad Gita is to know Krishna. The goal of the Vedas is to know Krishna. So there's so many things in the Vedas that aren't explicitly, apparently at least, explicitly, maybe implicitly, indirectly rather than directly. Therefore, Vyasadeva was not satisfied with the indirect, but indirectly leading to bhakti, because it's only by the means of bhakti that one can understand Krishna. The goal of the Vedas to understand Krishna. So, you know, all roads lead to Rome, as they say. You've heard that expression? It's a European term, because Rome was one time like the place, Roman Empire. All roads lead to Rome. It's like, at least that's a Western phrase. So all parts of the Vedas lead to Krishna, although it may not be apparent, and somebody takes this part, that part, the other part, and they don't have the big picture, like the elephant tail and the trunk and leg and the body and the ears, and, you know, there's different parts, but the big picture is an elephant's an elephant. So the big picture is the purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna. Indirectly, okay, but that's the purpose. And persons don't understand the purpose, they'll get the indirect conclusion. and then they'll become very convinced, faithfully convinced, in whatever that thing is. Karmakanda, worship of the demigods, or something, or meditation on nothingness, or meditation on impersonal Brahman, or fruitive activity without any purpose. And so elevation to Krishna consciousness, so that therefore lead to the path. That's the verse. By practicing this system, one can become joyful, prasanna, and progressively advance toward the path of the absolute truth. Now that prasanna is a positive, as opposed to mitigation of the negative, because that's material. Mitigation of the negative is material. It says more or less material. So less material means happiness? No. Prabhupada's example, I like his little example. A man is banging his head against the wall and it hurts. And his friend comes along and says, "Hey, why are you banging your head against the wall? Stop banging your head against the wall." Bliss. But that's not bliss. That's not happiness. So what's happiness? It's happiness. Brahma Sukh. Same from the prayers, or the statement of Shukadev Goswami, and who we just were discussing in chapter 12. The happiness of the cowherd boys, the happiness of all the residents of Vrindavan, including the cowherd boys, is directly engaging in activities with Krishna. That's happiness. And there's a comparative happiness that's Brahma Sukh. And that's that we discussed yesterday, that the Brahmavadi. Brahmavadi is not a Mayavadi. A Brahmavadi is one who experiences Brahma Sukh. They actually are acquainted with that feature of the Supreme. That's a little array of the light of the sun, and behind the light of the sun is the sun god. So it's a happiness of realization of array of Brahman. And there's a happiness. So that's this prasanna. And then the prasanna gives one enthusiasm to keep going, because it's blissful. So there's stages of what people think is happiness. Stop banging your head against the wall. The dialing down of the miseries of material existence, and that's happiness. That's not happiness. Not happiness for many reasons. It's ashashvatam. It's temporary. And it's just diminishing of the misery. That's not what happiness is. We discussed this. Negation is not what happiness is. But by this process, one can become joyful, prasanna, and progressively advance towards the path of the absolute truth. Meaning, realization of the absolute truth in the full sense of the absolute truth. And progress towards that is authorized, or it is important, or it's something that a Vaishnava, there are descriptions, many descriptions of Vaishnavas that engage in this process. No, the contemporary application of that principle is hard to find, because people are not qualified in this age of Kali to do like that. But in previous ages, it may have been, it was possible, and people attained the platform of attraction to the Bhagavan feature. And how? From Paramatma feature to the Bhagavan feature, it's very simple, by Shravanam. By hearing sound vibration of Bhagavan, his form, qualities, pastimes, name, etc. From that position of not just neutrality, but spiritual positive prasana, positive spiritual happiness. And then there's suprasana. And that's what bhakti, that's the Canto 1, Chapter 2, that's what bhakti delivers, or it is suprasana. Or there are other Sanskrit terms, ananda. It's spiritual happiness, spiritual bliss. Anandam buddhi vardhanam in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's language. It's an ocean. Ambudhi. And vardhanam is expanding ocean of bliss. That's how he characterizes the hearing and chanting of name, form, qualities, pastimes, etc. The emphasis may go to the name, however, implicit in this understanding of the name implies other features of the Absolute Truth in addition to his name, because the name is not alone any more than Krishna is alone as his entourage. And with his entourage, with the king, he has loving dealings. And Krishna has loving dealings with his devotees. It's one of the sections we're going to be hearing from Brahma's prayers. He has this realization of this. Sukadeva Goswami expressed it in chapter 12, and Brahma is going to express it in chapter 14. The very, very, very special, unique glory of these residents of Vrindavan, who Brahma had the opportunity to observe from his Vimana up in the sky, along with other devas, but now he's had direct experience of this super great fortune of the residents of Vrindavan. So it's authoritative. And we here, our Rasika Bhaktas, they describe the special position and the activities of Krishna in Vrindavan and the specialness of Vrindavan in comparison to any other place. And here the Bhagavatam reveals it again and again, especially that section of the Bhagavatam that deals with 10th canto and Krishna's activities in Vrindavan. They're very special and not easy to understand. So, therefore, Kapila Deva is, through sound, through instructions to Devahuti, he's taking her step by step by step, and then coming attractions. He's going to explicitly describe devotional service, because that's the goal. And there's steps to reach the goal. And there's different features of devotional service in addition to dhyan, or the meditation on, just like that reference to the last verse of chapter 6 Bhagavad Gita, where the mind is fixed on the Supreme. The mind is fixed on the Supreme, and the other senses, by the mind being fixed on the Supreme, are then directed in relation to the Supreme. And that's transcendental life. See it a different way. How to keep, because it's a common question that comes in classes, at the end of class is question and answer time. I find, so the question goes something like this: from reading or hearing or engaging in Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, it's so nice, And then when that's over, I start doing my duties. And the duties, and to pay attention to my duties, I get so absorbed in my duties, all of that sweetness and absorption, it dissipates. It's gone. And then hours pass, and then little light goes on, pick my head up and see, whoa, what happened? So then the question goes, how do I stay fixed when I have my duties to perform, and I'm being attentive to my duties? I can't just be mechanical in my duties. I have to be attentive to my duties. Some occupations require like super attentiveness, say hospital care or something, or so many examples. Care of children, driving a truck, or something. You have to be attentive. So how do you stay in that, because the word is used these days, that zone where you're absorbed in Krishna and you're engaged in the senses and objects that are on the material side of life, your worldly duties? That's a common question. There's different ways of asking that question, but it's a common question. And there are different ways of answering that or responding to that question. They're all amount to the same thing. When one becomes truly Krishna conscious, that is fixed in absorption in Krishna, then the activities that you engage in, the energies become the internal energy. And so you're no longer just engaged in worldly, you're engaged in the internal energy. And the internal energy spiritualizes everything. Your senses, your mind, and the object that one contacts. Just like I'll give a little example, and then I'm going to end. Neela Manjari was attending some kind of training in deity worship. I think it was out of the country, because she yesterday evening she gave me a gift. The gift was from New Mayapur. That's in France, right? New Mayapur. And the pujari gave her a gift to give to me. The pujari gave a gift that was Prabhupada's japa bag. Just like, but it came from the murti in the temple. Just like some temples have Prabhupada, not like this, but on one of his hands as a bead bag, or they have by his side his bead bag or something like that. So it's a bead bag that came from Prabhupada. It was a murti bead bag. It wasn't one that he personally used when he was present on the planet, but it's tadiya. It's spiritual, like the objects on the altar. Tadiya, it's worshipable as the deity is worshipable, because it's paraphernalia used in the service of the Supreme Lord. So what makes that bead bag or the Achman cup different than some other metal cup with a spoon in it? What makes it spiritual? Is used in Christian service. So that is to say, by using this example, something that's material can become spiritual, depends on the consciousness behind. So it's a materialist. If someone received Prabhupada's bead bag, they wouldn't want to do this thing. The objects and the senses both become spiritualized based upon how strong the Krishna consciousness within is. And because Srila Prabhupada was who Srila Prabhupada was, his bead bag is worshipable. And then you can add to a list of things that are worshipable in connection with. And when he moved about, he was doing this and that and the other thing that other people may do, like that celebrated photograph of Prabhupada standing in line in an airport with his passport in hand and whatever other documents he had in his hand, boarding pass or whatever else. And, he's doing the same thing everyone else is doing in that photograph, for example, but one is spiritual, the other is not. So the answer to that standard question is, by dint of gradual elevation, because the elevation is generally gradual, so gradual elevation of consciousness to the point of one's mind is fixed on the Supreme, which is exactly what the verse is saying. The purpose of the Ashtanga Yoga system is to fix the mind. But on what? It's not explicit, but to fix the mind on the Supreme. Manmana. Bhavamad Bhakto. Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. So when the mind is fixed on the Supreme, then radiating outward, in concentric circles outward, things become spiritualized on the strength of Krishna consciousness. So Krishna consciousness is being equated to the mind-fixed mind. But the mind is material. But the mind that's fixed on Krishna is no longer material. And then everything else that follows. So what the mind does is very important, and therefore how we chant our japa, or how we hear the Bhagavatam, or how we engage this faculty of consciousness, because it's an extension of the consciousness of the soul. This to spiritualize the consciousness, the covered consciousness, is primarily through sound. Initially, at least, through sound, and then primarily continuing. The quality of how we're hearing makes all the difference. So the whole chapter of how to fix the mind on Super Soul, chapter 27, 28. Any discussion?
So the purpose of all the yoga systems being ultimately to worship Krishna and engage the mind in the service of Krishna. So for those of us who are in this path of bhakti, coming to the platform of engaging in deity service, it's a select few individuals get that opportunity, worshipping the deity in person. So that's an extraordinary blessing, and it cannot be taken lightly. And still, why is it, even after coming to that platform, sometimes we see those who are engaged get into simple, argumentative mentality, or sometimes, the attention is not on Krishna, it is more on something else. They get sidetracked, and that's happening at the platform of worship of deity. Why that happens?
Your question is why?
Yeah, why that happens?
There's many answers. One of those many answers, I have been meditating for some time during the Festival of the Holy Name to at least shine a spotlight on it. And the what and the how are there, but the why isn't there. Or not sufficiently there, and therefore the what, the details of following procedures and all those nice things, and that what and the how are there simply by training, which is imperative, but the why is not. So it's not from the platform of purposeful. It's for some other reason. It's a stage of, there's a stage of sadhana bhakti that it's senses engaged in an activity not within the scope of the definition that Rupa Goswami gives of sadhana bhakti. This came up in the discussion yesterday, and I sent this little reference from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu was the definition of sadhana bhakti. Definition of sadhana bhakti includes there's an ecstasy, a bhava that is awakened. So that maybe it may not have been awakened. Maybe somebody's like a system that you've been engaging in, and I like it, and that is when somebody wants second initiation to ask them why. Because they can do the what or the how, but without the why. So, what is it? And it's warm up, or it's heading in the direction of, but it's not yet, according to Rupa Goswami, is the definition of sadhana. And without sadhana, you can't get to prema. You can't go further. So it's fundamental. Sadhana bhakti can be defined as the definition of bhakti is defined, neither this nor that, neither gyan nor karma. But then what it is that Krishna should be pleased. And if that's the focus, then there's an ecstasy. Even if it's not mature, it's in this beginning stages of sadhana, or the earlier stages of sadhana, it's not bhava bhakti, it's sadhana bhakti. But when there's some bhava, there's some ecstasy in the meditation that Krishna is to be pleased. So, and one of the answers is a long-winded one. One of the answers of why this happens is people they're doing the externals without the internal, and therefore it's a practice that's not even really complete yet. So how to get to the place where it's more complete, or complete enough that it really matches Rupa Goswami's definition of what sadhana bhakti is. And if you didn't get a copy, you ask, he'll send you a copy. Why are we doing devotional service? Etc. Why are we doing anything? Why are we chanting? Why are we thising and thatting? And without the why, then there's practice, there's the what. And so then another answer in response to your question. Slackening. This is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's phrase. Slackening in submission. So once upon a time I submitted. And then I became complacent. And the submission slackened, and then when you turn away from the light, then there's shadow or darkness. So that's another explanation, another why. Why does this happen? Maya covers those that are not facing light. So the reflection of the real thing is the consciousness of such a person. And then they're not seeing the deity, or they're not seeing the Vaishnava, they're not seeing that which is spiritual as spiritual. And then if you're not seeing what is spiritual as spiritual, then you get into the seeing what is spiritual as material. And comes the dissension. Now, Prabhupada didn't dissect all this. He would say things very simple. This temple is not in Naperville. This temple is in Vaikuntha. And he would say that many times. And then if this temple's in Vaikuntha, then why is what you just described going on? And it's not just that. It's not, people may fall down. Besides, getting in quarrels, dissension between one jiva and another jiva over who knows what. It happens because the center is missing. Then, there's your question is why, and then the next question is what to do. Crime, why and what to do. You know that one. It was a big thing in Time magazine. So then Prabhupada picked it up and started lecturing on crime, why and what to do. The solution is there, but persons, those persons that are in this dissension position, whatever it's not just deity worship, just life into some dissension. This party thinks they're right, and that party thinks they're not right. I'm right, and there's dissension because the center isn't reached. So how to the topic, a nice place for those that are trying to look at the solution, what to do, unity in diversity principle. And Prabhupada spoke about that many times. And then there's methods and so forth, but the principle is unity in diversity. And that there's differences is nice. It'd be boring if it wasn't, but it's not boring. There's diversity. It's the nature of the place, nature of the spiritual and material world. There's diversity, and how to honor diversity while. So there's differences, but honor those differences based upon the unity. And the unity is that which is spiritual is spiritual. But part of the dissension is this party thinks this is right and I want to assert what's right. And that party thinks that's not right, this is right, and I want to assert what's right. So there's the dissension, the dispute. And there's so many. There's n number of disputes. Turn around and there's n times n. Opportunities for dispute. So what to do? Unity. So then how do you get unity? Advancement of Krishna consciousness. Without advancement of Krishna consciousness, then the dissension goes on. If Prabhupada didn't bring, this is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness together, people would have dissension that has no unity. And then he brought ISKCON, and then there's dissension during his lifetime. And this and that, or this group and that group would have dissension. And, it wasn't very pleasing, and he became the referee. But the referee position was to encourage Krishna, to lift consciousness where Krishna's at the center. And then my business becomes how to be a servant of the Vaishnava, because that's pleasing to Krishna, and he's at the center. So whether I'm right or they're right or who's right, Krishna should be pleased. It's not my way is the way to please Krishna, as the other person doesn't have a clue about what it means to please. So that's disrespect of differences rather than respecting differences. This particular point was the theme of, I forget what the event was called, but we had this little event, Vaishnava etiquette event, and I chose the topic, which was respect. So when there's not respect, not only I respect myself, and if someone doesn't agree with me, then I don't respect them, because I respect myself. So I can't respect somebody that doesn't have the same view. If they have another view, then I can't respect them, and then there's dissension. So respect is the basis of interpersonal, and ISKCON, or life, is interpersonal. It's not just, there's personal and there's interpersonal. It's not recommended we just go to the forest or live in a cave or something like that. There's social interaction. And so there's differences with their social interaction, and how to have the how-to, the solution to the potential of dissension. One of the answers is respect. That's a path towards unity. Krishna is to be pleased. And somebody may get stuck in the dissension dispute and not be able to see that Krishna is to be pleased. It goes on. It's not just on the altar. That's an interesting starting point. Anything else?
Maharaj, we understand that there's a lot of nuances in the language that is used in our scriptures, or the verbiage that's used. So, for example, the particular name that a personality is referred by is part of that beauty. In the pastimes of Lord Shiva and Sati, sometimes she's referred to as Dakshayani, so the daughter of Dakshayani, has a particular significance to it. Similarly, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna and Krishna are referred by different names at different times to signify different things. And in this set of verses, Lord Kapila refers to his mother in different ways. In the particular verse that we're reading this morning, he calls her the daughter of the king, which captured my attention, because instead of saying my mother, or even closer than daughter of the king, she's been the wife of Gardamani. So I'm just wondering if there's some significance here.
What you're speaking is a point that I've been listening to a seminar Bhaktivedanta Maharaj gave on the Bhagavatam, and his point is the Bhagavatam is about relationships, and he gave as an example something that he had recently heard from a speaker on Ramayana. The speaker in Ramayana was referring, his whole class was when Hanuman came before Sita after, in the Shok garden, and he wanted verification. Are you Sita or something like that? He understood, but he wanted verification. So she gave 3 examples of who she was. And she referred to herself as the wife of Ram, the daughter of Janak, and the daughter-in-law of Dasarath. So she was defining herself in terms of her relationships. However, I did a little research, and she specifically refers to herself by her name, Sita. But who is Sita? And she's defined by or understood by her relationships. So that when you just gave this example of how Kapila Deva is identifying his mother, the daughter of a king. So we're not in isolation. Bhagavatam is teaching us, and Scripture is teaching us, Bhagavad Gita is teaching us so much about, the names of a person or a thing is in relationship with, and ultimately what they're back to this the theme. Everything is in relation with the Supreme, and we don't often see that. If we don't make reference to that, we may not remember it. We may not have due respect for another because we're part and parcel of the Supreme. Okay. Someone else? Srila Prabhupada ki